I was saying, y'all, about Rico from Street Scores, and we're here to break down the difference between the 2023 Commanders team and the 2024 one. We're not even looking at the coaching staff in the front office because those were obvious, huge improvements, but we're going position group by position group to really see where we improved and some areas where we may not have improved. Maybe we're just the same, just around the same level, or maybe we actually got a little worse. So we're going to dive into every position group. I'm going to have the pictures of the players, everything like that. And then I'm also going to have different arrows, amounts of arrows to represent how much of a difference it is. One arrow, slightly better, slightly worse. Two arrows, moderately better, like significantly better. And then three arrows is like way better, thank goodness type of thing. And every position group will also have some arrows on the side to indicate how much we improved overall for that position group as well. But before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. So many ideas on the way, like I always say, but trust me, I have so many tabs. I can't wait to get to y'all working. I'm cooking up some of those film sessions for the rookie class and everything like that. Whole lot of videos on the way. Just make sure you stay tuned, and I do want to get a live stream out there soon, so stay tuned for whenever I announce one, like a call-in show live stream for y'all to call in and all of that type of stuff. So stay tuned for all of that, and without further ado, let's go and get to it, man. Let's get it. Adam. All right, so first of all, I'm expecting big upgrades to every group because of coaching. So you're going to see some of these position groups. This is purely player-based. So even if there's a position group where I actually see us like we slightly regressed for that specific position group, overall, I'm expecting every position group to ultimately be better because of coach. And again, this is just purely based on talent. I'm going to incorporate and calculate scheme and coaching a little bit, but for the most part, I'm just trying to compare player versus player, mano y mano. That's it. And then also another heads up before we dive into everything. These are also based on the floors and like week one projections, because a lot of these position groups have higher ceilings from 2024 compared to 2023, literally except for edge rushers. So I'm not saying that ultimately a position group will be worse than what we had in 2023. But as of right now, going into week one, what can I expect from each of these position groups? So definitely keep that in mind. This is a viewpoint of what this position group, what these players will potentially look like week one heading into the regular season. Not ultimately, because ultimately, and maybe it's just me being glass half full, but I feel like every position group has the potential to be better than what we had in 2023 for sure. Again, coaching included, scheme included as well, development included. But again, just keep in mind, this is for week one only. Now let's dive into it. First of all, we have the quarterbacks. Again, this is week one only. Of course, ceiling wise, I think Jayden Daniels will probably be 3 arrows, because I just truly believe that Jayden Daniels has the potential to be a top 15, top 10 quarterback in the NFL. But I also feel like we need to acknowledge the fact that Marcus Mariota is a worse backup than Jacoby Brissett. Point blank, period. And that's now, that's week one, that's future, that's whatever. That is a downgrade. I probably should have done 2 negative arrows for that one, man. I would take Jacoby Brissett in a heartbeat over Marcus Mariota. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you're hoping that Jayden Daniels is able to play every single snap, make every throw. You're hoping that the backup quarterback never even has to be considered to come in, ever. So ultimately, the only thing that really matters is the Jayden Daniels upgrade over Sam Howell. And this is, again, a week one thing. So would Sam Howell look like going into week one 2023 compared to Jayden Daniels, what he looks like going into week one of 2024? And I'm high on Sam Howell. I think he'll ultimately end up being a really good quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks, but I got to give a pretty significant edge for Jayden Daniels. Not like a slightly better edge with 1 arrow, and again, I like Sam Howell a lot, so I'm not going to give Jayden Daniels 3 arrows. If instead of Sam Howell, we had other quarterbacks up there, like compared to what Carson Wentz gave us a couple of years ago, it would easily be 3 arrows. easily. But this just also represents how high I am on Sam Howell, but I'm just that much higher on Jayden Daniels. I'm excited to see what these guys look like when they finally get out there, especially Jayden Daniels. Now, I think week one wise, he's a day one ready to go quarterback. He already looks better than all of the other veterans in our quarterback room right now. That may not necessarily be saying much, but it's the fact that Jayden Daniels looks better with a lot of the nuanced things, the veteran quarterback things that typically the more seasoned quarterbacks have over the rookie quarterbacks like a Jayden Daniels. Like, he's going through his progressions quicker. He's getting to his third and fourth read quicker than Marcus Mariota and Jeff Driscoll and all of those other quarterbacks that we have right now. So Jayden Daniels' week one capabilities are sky high. I also feel like his ceiling is sky high as well. I think he literally has top 15, top 10, maybe even top 7 quarterback potential to him. But again, this video is focused on solely what these guys look like going into week one 2023 compared to week 1 2024. That's just how I'm trying to keep it, just to simplify it. Running backs as well. Now, Antonio Gibson ceiling wise, I love Antonio Gibson's ceiling. I'm very high on him, but I think Austin Eckler productivity wise, especially, I mean, they both have fumble problems, so that's difficult, but Austin Eckler has been a touchdown magnet, and his veteran leadership is also showing up so far in drills. Maybe if I did this like a few weeks ago, maybe like over a month ago, like when we first signed Austin Eckler, maybe I would have done like a neutral white line. You'll see some of those situations throughout this video where it's like I really can't give the edge of the either side. But the fact that Austin Eckler is showing the other running backs how to do the drills perfectly, like Brian Robinson will do a drill, it'll look really good. Then you have some of the other running backs in our running back group that are doing the drills as well, and they look pretty good. But Austin Eckler is going like 100% all the time. He's paying attention to every little detail possible in the drills, and there's a big difference between how he's running the drills and how everybody else in our running back group is running the drills. Even if Antonio Gibson were here, Austin Eckler would look different running those same exact drills as well. So that veteran leadership, that veteran presence is showing, and I feel like that's going to make every other running back better. He's basically leading by example. This is how you do these drills. This is how much you need to care about every little thing that you're doing as a running back. So I can't wait to see how much of an impact that has on Brian Robinson for him to potentially improve just by simply practicing with Austin Eckler all of the time. And I can't wait for them to get out there on that field. So running back, I give it 1 arrow up overall. I feel like ultimately we have improved slightly. I'm not going to go as far as to say like we just dramatically improved. That's probably a mix of, I think Antonio Gibson has a very high ceiling. Wouldn't be surprised if the New England Patriots find a way to unlock it. Also, Antonio Gibson's biggest problem was fumbling. You could argue Austin Eckler fumbles even more. But at the same time, Austin Eckler has been a more productive running back, and I'm expecting him to come here and do the same thing as well. So I would say slight upgrade, but not like a dramatic one. That's why I only gave it 1 green arrow. Then you're moving on to the wide receivers, and overall, this is kind of neutral, because I'm not going to lie. Jamison Crowder, to me, is an obvious upgrade over Dax Milne, but going from Curtis Samuel to Luke McCaffrey, again, I'm projecting week 1 of the regular season. I think Luke McCaffrey's ceiling is sky high. I think Luke McCaffrey could eventually become a better receiver overall than Curtis Samuel, but am I expecting him to come right out the gate and do that week 1? Not necessarily. We'll have to see about that. And then also I included at the very bottom, you see right there, depth, because even like depth chart wise, like depth as far as like the guys on the back end of the receiving room, it's kind of hard to argue which group of wide receivers, like when we're talking about a 90-man roster, all of these several receivers, we have like 10, 11 receivers on roster right now. Which group of 10 to 12 receivers are better either this offseason or last offseason going into week 1? And I'm slightly leaning towards this offseason, but it's not dramatic enough. So that's why I put question marks rather than green arrows, which you'll see about certain position groups where the depth is way better going into this 2024 season than it was going into the 2023 season. But overall, again, the wide receiver position kind of neutral. If we would have somehow found a way to keep Curtis Samuel and draft Luke McCaffrey, this would be a dramatic improvement in the wide receiver room. But right now, your obvious top 3 receivers are Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, and Luke McCaffrey. And then outside of that, there's still some question marks. I like De'Ami Brown, best blocking wide receiver we have on the entire roster, I believe. Jamison Crowder, again, a big upgrade over Dax Milne, in my personal opinion. Not like a huge one, but I think it's going to be significant, especially going into week 1 wise. But again, overall, the wide receiver room isn't just like a dramatic improvement like I hoped it would be coming into the season. But what was a dramatic improvement was this tight end room, which is why I give it 2 arrows up overall, because I mean, of course, you have John Bates, which is the same from last year, but you're basically going from Curtis Hodges to Armani Rogers. I think Armani Rogers has an elite ceiling. Maybe that's just me. And the fact that he looks back 100% healthy from the severe leg injury he suffered at the beginning of last season, I think that's going to be a huge plus there. Also going from Cole Turner to Ben Sinnott, huge plus as well. And I like Cole Turner. But Ben Sinnott, I think, is going to be different. I think he's going to take over as our tight end one, the guy that plays the most snaps out of our entire tight end room, even more than Zach Ertz at a certain point in this season. Even if Zach Ertz stays fully healthy throughout this season, I think Ben Sinnott is just that special. I think he's going to eventually overtake Zach Ertz as the tight end that gets most of the snaps. Because it's hard to say who's necessarily going to start because it depends. John Bates is your best blocking tight end, so on obvious running downs, John Bates starts over Zach Ertz technically. But when we're thinking about throwing the ball, Zach Ertz and Ben Sinnott and Armani Rogers start over John Bates. So it just depends on what you're talking about. That's why I don't really want to say starter. But if we're talking about the guy that's going to be on the field the most, it will probably start off as Zach Ertz going into week 1. I think Ben Sinnott will eventually take that over. And then also, I think Zach Ertz is a great tight end to bring in, but I'm not going to go too far about saying that he's going to be like this huge dramatic upgrade over Logan Thomas. I think he is an upgrade, but I don't think it's as dramatic as going from Cole Turner to Ben Sinnott and Ben Sinnott, my fault, and Curtis Hodges going to Armani Rogers. I think it's going to be a significant and fairly obvious upgrade, but at the same time, I feel like it's more so going to be the product of everything around him. I think Zach Ertz is playing with a better quarterback here than Logan Thomas has had for the past few years with the Commanders. I think he's also going to play with a better offensive coordinator than Logan Thomas had the past few years. So this is more so the fact that I'm relatively high on Logan Thomas, probably higher than most people are out there. I'm happy that we cut him. I'm happy that we moved on from Logan Thomas to Zach Ertz, but I don't think it's got like that big of a gap. I feel like Logan Thomas, if he were here with this offensive coordinator and Cliff Kingsbury with Jaden Daniels as his quarterback, this whole new regime, Adam Peters is the GM and stuff like that, and especially if he could stay healthy, I think he would go out there and produce. I'm glad that we upgraded from him, and it is an upgrade, but I don't think it's just this huge dramatic upgrade. I think if anything, Ben Sinnott and Armani Rogers are the guys with the ceilings to be the future tight end duo of this franchise. That's why I'm just higher on them. But that's just me personally. I can see how some people would think that Zach Ertz is a huge upgrade over Logan Thomas. But just like Logan Thomas, I'm afraid of the health situation, and they're both only getting older. Now moving on to the interior offensive line, I feel like this is a pretty significant upgrade as well. I gave it 2 out of 3 arrows up on the right side as you see on the screen. And then Nick Gates to Tyler Biadasz, I almost gave it 3 arrows. I almost did, but I just still, if Tyler Biadasz was like a top 5 center, it would be an obvious 3 arrows. But I think he's easily like a top 20, top 15 center. That's why, you know, I'm be a little humble. I'm gonna give it 2 arrows for now. But I think that's a pretty big jump going from Nick Gates to Tyler Biadasz, and then Sadiq Charles to Nick Allegretti. I'm not sure. I mean, is Nick Allegretti even healthy enough to go? Is Nick Allegretti even like guaranteed to start over a Chris Paul? So that one's kind of like a question mark. And of course, Samuel Cosmi is just starting right guard, so that stays the same. But depth-wise, as you can see, I gave that 2 green arrows because the depth of this interior offensive line improved mightily going from the 2023 season to the 2024 one. I mean, we have Michael Dieter off the bench, y'all, like just chilling off the bench, waiting to go in if there's ever an injury type of situation. And then Chris Paul off the bench. Chris Paul started games for us last year. He may be a backup guard going into this season. So I think our depth dramatically improved. I think we had a big, significant increase in improvement going from Nick Gates to Tyler Biadasz as your starting centers. And then left guard is the only one where it's like, I'm not sure yet. I got to kind of wait and see. Maybe a little neutral, but who knows? We'll see how that goes. And then tackle. Here's the first position where I think there's even like somewhat of a real significant downgrade. And again, this is about week 1, because if we're projecting by the end of 2024 compared to the end of 2023, I think this would be a dramatic improvement because I'm just that high on Brandon Coleman's ceiling. I think he has Pro Bowl left tackle ceiling, but I don't necessarily think that he'll be ready to go week 1. And will he just be so not ready to play by week 1 to the fact that they actually choose to start Cornelius Lucas over Charles Leno. And I firmly believe that there is a reason that Charles Leno started over Cornelius Lucas for so long. Even though it seemed like sometimes when Cornelius Lucas came into the game, he seemed better than Charles Leno, but not necessarily, because that last game of the season against the Cowboys, I think Cornelius Lucas gave up 4 sacks himself. So, you know, the grass is always greener, like people are always saying. I'm not saying that Charles Leno was an elite or even necessarily a great left tackle, but I'm telling you right now, if we go into the season expecting Cornelius Lucas to be our starting left tackle, we are in a little bit of trouble. So really, we all need to be hoping that Brandon Coleman is ready to start week 1, because he gives you way more upside. If Brandon Coleman starting week 1, that means he got better. If Cornelius Lucas is starting week 1, that means we're right back to step 1 where we were. So we all need to be rooting for Brandon Coleman's development. Anthony Lynn, Bobby Johnson, all of those guys, do what you gotta do. Then of course your other right tackle, your other tackle as in your right tackle, is Andrew Wiley. So overall, week 1 wise, I give us a slight downgrade from week 1 going into last season, but we'll see. You never know. Brandon Coleman, something could just click, and then he looks like his 2022 TCU self at the NFL level, and then that will probably be like 2-3 green arrows up. It's just completely dependent upon how quickly Brandon Coleman can be ready to actually start at left tackle consistently, not just go out there in spurts just to get some experience. No, actually hold that left tackle spot down to where we don't even have to worry about it or think about it anymore. Then interior defensive line, big time improvement. I give it 2 out of 3 green arrows up, and it's literally just because Phidarian Mathis to Johnny Newton is absolutely insane. They might not necessarily play the exact same interior defensive line position. Like Phidarian Mathis is more of like a nose tackle, double team eater, true 0 tech. Johnny Newton's like a 3, maybe even a 5 tech, depending on how you want to do it. I've even seen sometimes in his Illinois tape where he's like standing up, no foot in the dirt, no hand in the dirt, just basically 2-point stance, lined up in like the A gap, ready to go, like as if he's like a middle linebacker and stuff like that. Johnny Newton's very versatile, but even though you technically maybe could play him as a 0 tech, I wouldn't advise it at all. I would prefer him as a 3 tech. I prefer him at edge rusher before I take him as a nose tackle. So again, that's like a weird comparison there, but really outside of that, everybody else is the same. So it's really just from going from Phidarian Mathis to Johnny Newton as far as your top 4 interior defensive linemen. That is a huge improvement right there. Huge, big time. I really should have given this at least 2.5 green arrows up on the right side, to be completely honest with y'all. When Johnny Newton comes back healthy, dealing with the Jones fractures that he's dealing with it in both feet, even though he's technically recovered from one, now he's recovering from the second one. I'm telling you right now, his pass rush upside is insane in the interior, man. I think maybe even immediately he's going to end up, it may not necessarily be by week 1, but I believe at some point year 1, Johnny Newton will be our best interior pass rushing defensive lineman. I think Jonathan Allen and Deron Payne are great, and I think they'll be way better, way more explosive with Johnny Newton in the lineup to kind of give themselves a rest and things like that, to where they don't have to play so often and so much to where they're fatigued and tired all of the time. But at the same time, I think Johnny Newton's pass rush is absolutely insane. His pass rush moves, his counters, he's so nuanced, he's so explosive. If he can keep his pad level lower, which I think they'll coach him up to do, I'm not saying he's Aaron Donald, but he has some Aaron Donald-like traits as far as like a slightly undersized interior defensive lineman that gets to the quarterback and is going to require double teams. That's Johnny Newton, man. And Phidarian Mathis, in comparison, he was just so bad. So, I don't want to use the word useless, but man, he just has not produced. I mean, I felt like it was a reach to already get him in the second round, and now it's looking even worse by the year. Even when he was healthy, he wasn't contributing. So that's a pretty huge, dramatic difference going from Mathis to Newton, just off of how bad Phidarian Mathis has been for us. Now, moving on to the edge rushers, this is another group where I would say it's maybe a slight decline, I'm not going to lie. And again, I'm talking about week 1 of the regular season, but with this one, even if we're talking ceiling, Chase Young, Montez Sweat, with their elite athleticism, we don't really have that in our edge rusher group right now. Nobody in our edge rusher group, as we currently have it constructed, have the ceiling of even just a Montez Sweat alone. Chase Young, though, I say we have an upgrade going from Chase Young to Dorrance Armstrong, even though Dorrance Armstrong has yet to start an entire season yet in his NFL career, is because of just the work ethic. Like, this man, Dorrance Armstrong, does not take plays off. Chase Young, even though he's more naturally talented than Dorrance Armstrong easily, there's not a debate about talent, but as far as being productive, giving it your all every snap, doing what the coaches ask you to do every play, and all of that type of stuff and hustling, Dorrance Armstrong, I think just off of that is going to be the more productive edge rusher, the better edge rusher, even going into week 1. And then Montez Sweat, I can't argue with. I mean, I'm hoping Cleveland Farrell is pretty good. And again, like I said before we really started to dive into this video, I think coaching is going to play a huge role into this. I think ultimately our edge rusher group will be more productive going into this season than they were last year, mostly because of coaching. But again, if we're just comparing talent to talent, Montez Sweat to Cleveland Farrell is a pretty big downgrade. You saw it after we traded Montez Sweat to the Bears, how he started to take over. And I think he led the NFL in sacks going from the trade deadline to the end of the season. Or at the very least, he was one of the top guys in pressure, sacks, and all that type of stuff. So Montez Sweat to Cleveland Farrell is definitely a significant downgrade, but hopefully Cleveland Farrell can at least hold down the edge as like a true run stopper, and then Dante Fowler comes in as your situational pass rusher, which is why comparing him to James Smith-Williams is a little weird, because James Smith-Williams doesn't give you much pass rush upside, but he's a good edge setting run stopper. Dante Fowler doesn't give you much against the run, but he's a great third down, obvious passing down, third and long type of pass rusher guy. And he's also coming off of his best season statistically from last year with the Dallas Cowboys, oddly enough. So I kind of just gave that like an even out because their skill sets are not really comparable in a way. So just overall, mostly because of the downgrade from Montez Sweat to Cleveland Farrell, I gave us one downgrade arrow, but nothing too dramatic. And again, this is all I want to keep emphasizing. This is purely based on talent. Because of coaching, because of scheme, I think this group of edge rushers on the right are going to outproduce the edge rushers on the left. And I also think KJ Henry only getting better, getting more opportunities is going to make this edge rusher group better overall as well. And then the linebackers got to be one of the most, if not the most improved group on the entire team. That is an obvious 3 green arrows up. Going from Cody Barton to Bobby Wagner, self-explanatory. Going from David Mayo to Frankie Louvu, self-explanatory. And then even Jamin Davis in a new scheme, in a better scheme with a better defensive coaching staff. I should have put green arrows going from old Jamin Davis to new Jamin Davis with how much better I think he's going to be this upcoming season. First of all, he's as motivated as anybody else. We didn't pick up his 5th-year option, so that guy has to go out there and earn his next contract this year. But on top of that, I think the defensive scheme, they're already deploying him as like an edge rusher in practice so far, seeing if he can do it, if he can take over like a Micah Parsons like role where he's kind of still like an off-ball linebacker at times, but he's usually rushing the passer. I think with his elite athleticism and crazy high ceiling, you could argue he should have been doing that since when we drafted him. You know, he improved as a run stopper over these last few years. He's shown flashes in coverage, but ultimately him going after the quarterback is really his true calling. So I'm expecting a huge improvement there. So the linebacker group, I mean, straight up 3 out of 3. I mean, it went from arguably our biggest weakness on the team to arguably our biggest strength. I mean, it's absolutely insane. The linebacker group is ridiculous. I mean, even the fact that Bobby Wagner helped make Samuel Cosmi a better right guard from a situation in practice where Samuel Cosmi did his best to disguise the fact that he was pulling. Bobby Wagner still called it out to the rest of the defense. Samuel Cosmi had to take time out of his day to set aside to get Bobby Wagner and be like, hey man, please, I thought I did a great job of disguising that. How did you know that I was about to pull there? Bobby Wagner basically broke it down to him, and now Samuel Cosmi is a better right guard because of the middle linebacker you signed in free agency. I mean, I couldn't fit enough arrows on the screen to give you how much of an upgrade going from Cody Barton to Bobby Wagner is. Even as old as Bobby Wagner is, better athleticism, better run stopping, better coverage, better blitz ability, better being of the quarterback of the defense and reading things as soon as. I always bring up Sean Lee from the Cowboys days because even as slow as he was, most of us watching this video right now, most of y'all watching this video, even me included, and I'm slow, I feel like we were all faster than Sean Lee, especially those last few years that he played for the Cowboys. But he was always making plays. He was always disrupting things that we tried to do on offense because he was just that smart. He was that instinctual. He was always ahead. And it's better to be ahead mentally than to be ahead physically because, I mean, you could be as fast as you want, but if you're 2 steps the wrong direction, it doesn't matter. And Sean Lee was just so elite mentally that even though he lacked athleticism and he was probably just as slow as like a David Mayo, it didn't matter. That's something that Bobby Wagner's bringing on top of the fact that he's not as slow as Sean Lee at all. So I'm telling y'all, man, this huge upgrade in the linebacker room is I'm not saying that it's going to carry our defense, but it's going to matter a lot. And then also the star and slot corner position, I gave it 2.5. I had to break the rules here and do a 2.5 because I couldn't say that it was a 2. Because I feel like it's a little bit more of an improvement than some of the other position groups we gave 2 out of 3. But I also couldn't give it a straight up 3 because nothing on this roster is as improved as the linebacker group. So I feel like 2.5, I kind of cheated the system here. Because only reason I'm not giving Danny Johnson and Mike Sainristil 3 arrows is because I like Danny Johnson. That's the only reason. I agree with Chris Sims when he says that Mike Sainristil has the potential to be the best slot corner in the entire NFL within the next 2 years. I agree with Nick Saban when he says that Mike Sainristil was arguably the best pound for pound player in the entire draft. I agree with Joe Klatt when he says that Mike Sainristil was the best player on the best defense out of the entire college football. And everybody talks about how JJ McCarthy was carried by his team. So why are we not praising the guys that supposedly carried him to a championship in a quarterback-led environment that the college football is right now? Whereas if you don't have the better quarterback, you're usually not going to win, even if you do have the better defense. Well, if JJ McCarthy truly got carried that much, why are we not acting like Mike Sainristil is not one of the biggest steals in the draft if he was the best player on that defense that carried said quarterback? So again, the only reason this isn't 3 stars is because I like Danny Johnson, and y'all know how he got. Once it turned to like November, December, that man was locking people up. I don't know what happened September and October where he was just completely useless, it seemed. But November and December, he would start to lock up. So only reason it's not 3 stars is because that's a compliment to Danny Johnson. And then Khaleke Hudson, the only reason I gave this 3 stars is, first of all, I believe in Jeremy Chinn's ceiling. I think when he was runner-up to Defensive Rookie of the Year, only behind Chase Young their rookie season a few years ago, I believe that that's truly who he is. I feel like his regression as far as production goes, I don't even think he necessarily regressed individual. I just feel like production wise he regressed because the Carolina Panthers changed defensive coordinators, and that guy literally just ignored the star, or what some of y'all know it as the Buffalo nickel position. Literally just ignored it. The hybrid safety linebacker role, he wasn't that. He was more of like a traditional defense type of guy. Completely didn't know how to use them and just literally left Jeremy Chinn out there on the island like, you figure it out. And that's why Jeremy Chinn jumped ship to also join Frankie Louvu with the Washington Commanders, because he knew that the Commanders, Dan Quinn's history with Cam Chancellor and Trayvon Curse over there from the Dallas Cowboys, he loves his big hybrid safety linebacker type of guys. He knows how to utilize them. That's why Jeremy Chinn wanted to be a part of this, and he's basically betting his career and really his generational wealth on whether this defensive scheme is going to get the most out of him. He's banking on himself as well, but he's also betting on the fact that Dan Quinn and these guys will utilize him the right way to where he can go and get that big time money in 2025, which I hope ends up being with us. But hey, man, I believe in his ceiling. He's one of the most athletic players out of the entire NFL, regardless of position. Just one of the biggest alien athletic freaks doing it. Ceiling ridiculously high. And if you get a guy with those elite athletic traits with a really smart and creative coaching staff that we have here, I think he's going to explode onto the scene. I wouldn't be surprised if he even makes a Pro Bowl. And that's why I give this 3 green arrows towards Jeremy Chinn. But at the same time, even though I like Khaleke Hudson, compared to how we used him last year defensively, schematically, it just wasn't good. I don't think it's necessarily his fault. I just think that the Commanders last year just didn't use him the right way. Jack Del Rio and those guys did not get the most out of him. So I don't want people to look at this and think that I hate Khaleke Hudson. I just think Jeremy Chinn is that great. And I also think the difference in scheme is just going to be that big of a difference there. To basically compared to how productive Khaleke Hudson was in the Buffalo nickel, what I know it as the star position, compared to what Jeremy Chinn is going to do with it, that's got to be 3 arrows right there. And then the outside cornerbacks, really the only reason I give it 1 out of 3 green arrows is because the depth is insane. The depth going into week 1, where we are currently right now, say just end of May 2024 compared to end of May of 2023, the depth is dramatically better, like drastically better. It's insane how much depth. We have so much talent in this outside cornerback group on this team. The only problem is the starters. Kendall Fuller, I think he's been more productive than Michael Davis, but based on how I feel Michael Davis is going to perform week 1 because of the scheme that we're going to use him in, I don't think Kendall Fuller would have been as good. Kendall Fuller has been the better corner overall the past couple of years, but Michael Davis is going to be a better fit for what Dan Quinn and those guys want to do. So that's why that kind of canceled out to me. Then, of course, Benjamin St-Juste and Emmanuel Forbes are the same, but the real improvement here is the depth behind the top 3 guys. After the top 3 guys, what we have in 2024 compared to what we had in 2023, huge difference in my opinion. That's why I gave it 2 arrows, but I can't let 2 arrows affect the right side too much from depth, because at the end of the day, it's depth. They're not starters. I mean, maybe somebody steps up as a starter, but we'll see. And then also moving on to the safety group, I feel like this is 1.5, mostly because of the depth here as well. And I should have given this 3 arrows for the depth. I feel like the depth in this safety room is actually really crazy. Like, I feel like we have a couple of guys on our safety room that may not even start for us that could start for other teams. That's how high I am in this safety talent that we have, especially among these young guys. And also going just from Cameron Curl to Quan Martin, I think Quan Martin is probably just as instinctual. Literally the only negative going from Cameron Curl to Quan Martin is that Cameron Curl's longer. Other than that, Quan Martin's more explosive, quicker, faster, more agile, can change directions quicker, and I think he's good. I think they pretty much even out as far as instincts go, and Cameron Curl's instincts was like his superpower, and I think Quan Martin showed flashes of that as well. So just out of respect for Cameron Curl, I only gave it 1 arrow, but I think Quan Martin has Pro Bowl potential at safety as well. Then of course Derek Forrest and Percy Butler are the same, but at the same time Derek Forrest missed pretty much all of last season, so I probably should have given a green arrow just for the fact that hurt him, not available him compared to actually available him. Now they can actually play in regular season games for us. Thank you. That's already an improvement there as well. But I gave it 1.5 stars because I think Quan Martin, just ceiling wise, is an automatic upgrade over Cameron Curl. And I also think the depth of this safety group is just absolutely ridiculous. I think other teams are jealous of the talent that we have in the safety group. We don't necessarily have this strong veteran presence like a Justin Simmons type of guy, but if you're looking at this talent, I mean, if you include Tyler Owens in there and things like that, the talent in this safety group is absolutely insane. I wouldn't be surprised a couple of years from now we have one of the best safety rooms in the entire NFL, and I'm talking floor wise, not even just ceiling, if they reach those ceilings. And then lastly, we also have the specialists. Now of course, going from Joey Slye to Brandon McManus, I think that's a slight improvement, but the problem is Brandon McManus ever even gonna attempt to kick for us in the regular season with the whole being sued situation that he has from the plane and dealing with the women and things like that? So I'm not even sure if he's going to be here, but if he is, if he ends up being innocent, if we end up keeping him for whatever reason, he is a slight improvement over Joey Slye. Joey Slye is the better 50-yard plus kicker, but Brandon McManus is the far more consistent anything 40 yards within kicker. I don't think he missed a single PAT last year. Like, so as far as like dependability, I got to give the slight edge to Brandon McManus just for that. And guys like Joey Slye kind of getting, you know, they're getting phased out of the NFL with the new kickoff rules. A guy like Joey Slye with a big leg that was able to kick it out of the back of the end zone, that doesn't really matter as much anymore. So that's another reason why I kind of give Brandon McManus the edge here, because one of Joey Slye's superpowers really doesn't even matter anymore at the NFL level anymore. No more. I mean, there's just the kickoff rules changed. Not really Joey Slye's fault, but that's just how it is. And then obviously going from the worst long snapper in the entire NFL last year, arguably the worst long snapper in Washington burgundy and gold history, to now we have Tyler Ott. Excuse me for the typo right there. I don't know how I forgot to put that there. His name is Tyler Ott. I fixed the picture. At first, the last video I did with graphics where I showed you the specialist, I had Cameron Cheeseman as Tyler Ott. Now I have the Tyler Ott picture correct, but now I don't have the Tyler Ott name right. It's always some random mistake, no matter how many times I proofread. Golly. But either way, just off that alone, I had to give this 2.5 stars, because going from one of the worst long snappers I've ever seen in my life to one of the most consistent. Tyler Ott was even a Pro Bowl long snapper a couple of years ago, I believe for the Seahawks or maybe the Ravens, one of those teams. He was a Pro Bowl long snapper. So we're going from the worst long snapper I've seen in at least a long time to a Pro Bowl long snapper. So that's a huge advantage right there. Tressway is still the same guy that he is. I mean, maybe he's regressing a little bit just due to age, who knows. Statistically, he has regressed these past couple of seasons compared to like years ago. But either way, I think overall we have improved mightily as far as the specialists go, mostly just because of the long snapper position, man. I mean, that was terrible last year. I think Joey Slye deserves a lot of grace, because a lot of the kicks that he was missing, a lot of field goals, were Cameron Cheeseman's fault, but it's kind of hard to tell that as like a typical just fan watching the game live. Cameron Cheeseman was messing up those snaps, which made it harder for Tressway to get the ball ready for Joey Slye to kick it. Tressway would have it there, but it wouldn't be done the right way. Now Joey Slye's missing the kick due to Cameron Cheeseman being in the catalyst for this whole destructive implosion from the special teams unit trying to kick these field goals. So Joey Slye honestly doesn't deserve a lot of the hate that he got last year, and that's why us getting a Pro Bowl long snapper in Tyler Ott, not Michael Davis, I apologize for that, is going to be a huge improvement for our special teams overall. And then also, of course, the coaching staff. I may do a whole separate video on the coaching staff, because going from Nate Caxer to Larry Izzo, I mean, that's probably 2.5 stars as well, but I'll save that type of thing for another video. I may do like a previous coaching staff to the 2024 coaching staff. Let me know if y'all want that in the comment section. I mean, I just thought of that just now. Let me know if you want that, and then I'll probably do something like that if y'all actually do want it. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content, man. I really appreciate y'all. Make sure y'all stay tuned. Again, let me know in the comment section if you do want like the same type of version like this, video like this, but instead of it being the players, it's the coaching staff. Let me know how you feel about all of that. And of course, I'm gonna try to do my best to read and reply to as many comments as possible. Just been super busy, but I really want to read y'all comments because I really care about y'all opinions, and I really want to know how y'all feel about a lot of the topics. So let me know how you agree, if you agree or disagree with any of the points that I made in this video. If you had to do a similar video, let me know in the comment section how you would make changes to how I felt about certain things. If you disagree with some of my upgrades or downgrades, whether it be individual player comparisons or just overall position groups as a whole, do you agree or disagree with any of my points? And of course, do not leave this video without leaving a like, and also make sure you stay tuned for more content as well. I appreciate y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.